Hey, welcome back. This is the What I Know About Roosevelt's video. I've done a couple of these with Victorinox and Demco and a few others, and I know a lot less about this particular company and set of knives than some of those others, unfortunately, but I did a little research in the past week, and I thought I might be able to go through some of the knives I have and talk about some of these interesting dates that I came across. So if you're not familiar, OZ Machine Company makes the Roosevelt. It's a super compelling, high demand knife. This is one of the most in demand models right here. They nickname it the Silver Surfer. It's a polished silver finish, magna cut blade. This particular one is numbered, I think I know it, but let's just double check, 1202. All the Roosevelts are numbered. And if you know only one date, the one you might want to know is right here at the top, which is the first production model. I think there were actually 7 of them that shipped around June 6th of 2019 when Daniel Osborne, the founder and owner of the company, took a few of them to Blade Show in 2019, and he's using AEBL blade steel at the time. So quite a lot to know about it. But let's get into it. I've definitely left some stuff off here. One just comes to mind right away, which is the blade steels, because I just said it. Some of those early ones were AEBL. There are quite a few different ones used, but I'd say the most popular ones or the most common ones that you'll see throughout the various knives are as follows. Oops, magnet is definitely not the correct name there. Can't talk and write at the same time, apparently. I wish I had dates for you on these, but I'm going to have to actually get back and maybe put that in the description, because that was one thing I left out when I was doing my research. But you might find it interesting to know that early on, they were not necessarily making knives. A lot of you probably know the pry bars because it's part of the EDC community, but they actually made Harley Floorboards. So dating back to 10/17, I should say October 17th of 2017, he put up his first product. He was still working full-time at another company. I think, really the full-time job started early 2020, if I understand correctly. But started off with the first product being floorboards, and that kind of, may key you in. It's not called OZ Knife Company. It's called OZ Machine Company, and there's a reason for that. It didn't start with knives. He said he knew he wanted to do knives, but without knowing all the details and never having met the man, couldn't tell you that level of detail on it. So I'm sure there are going to be some really cool comments. Please comment and tell people all the things that I haven't been able to get here from public information. But next, he did a Keychain Kickstarter in 2018, not too long after that. Started to do the pry bars in August of 2018 and some beads and stuff, for EDC in 2018. And then he did his first, I saw the first knife proto was posted. It was D2 in the proto, I believe. November 29th of 2018, it was called the Zor. He posted about a month later, or no, a couple weeks later, that he named it and stuff. And then later on, he came out with the proto for the Roosevelt, again, D2 blade steel at the time. Listened to part of a podcast. I didn't have enough time to get through all of it. I've listened to the first half of a podcast he did, and he talked about the first time he handed out the Roosevelt to a bunch of, I think it may have been at Blade Show, but it may have been somewhere else. I don't know for sure. He's like, hey man, give it to me hard. Tell me everything that I need to know to make this knife better. Don't pull your punches. I want to get better. And he had very little negative feedback on it. And if you go look at the original prototype, it looks almost exactly like this. It's amazing. He just kind of nailed it right from the beginning, which is super cool. One of the things you may not realize about this knife is, looking at it, is it's a 3-ounce knife. It's super light, high milling on the inside. If you've watched some of my other videos or anyone else that's reviewed it, it's very milled out. It's an amazingly light knife, and yet very effective cutting edge. The cutting edge is almost the same as a 9-inch Strider SMF. It's like about a 3-inch cutting edge on a knife that's, super tiny. To put it in context, I'll just pull out a real quick comparison knife, although this isn't intended to be, necessarily a review knife. We're doing more of the history of Oz here. Thought you might like that. Just that's a Benchmade bug out, so it's actually smaller in height than a Benchmade bug out, which catches some people by surprise because it doesn't photograph as small as it is. I think some people think it's a bigger knife, but again, to put it in perspective, there's a full-size Demco 8020. This is a very small knife, and that's something to note. All right, so let's keep moving on here. A couple changes that were made to this. There were a lot. He did a lot of custom hardware during the first 100 so knives. It looked like there was a lot of different hardware that was used, but I'd say one of the key elements was when they switched from the earlier hardware, which was kind of a dome hardware. And I'm going to pull out an example of that, but give me 1 second to grab it. But this is number 498 here. So this was a December of 2021 knife. And you can see this hardware is kind of this dome hardware here. So that's worth noting. The second thing, and I don't have an example of it, but early on they didn't have this removable lock bar insert. Really an important thing for sustainability of a knife and a titanium, frame knife, titanium frame lock knife, to be able to, take that out if your detent ball or whatever wear out is a really nice element. So that is something that changed very early on. He did the first lock bar insert in December of 2020, only about a year and a half after he started the knife. So he had made about 100 knives at that time, and that was a pretty big change. Looks like he gave us all a Christmas present at that time, which is pretty cool. Anything else worth noting here? Lock bar insert, the hardware, so that pivot hardware changed knife number 674. So that's number 498. So you can see it's still the old hardware, but number 674 in early 2022. So not that long ago, less than a year ago, he switched from that kind of dome style hardware to the flush hardware. So things worth noting there. Now, when you buy the knives, typically these days, you're going to see this cardboard box. It has a COA on it, tells you a little bit about the Rockwell hardness, the blade steel, the milling, and the clip. You can see in this case it was a Zirca tie clip versus when he has it all the same, it's going to say all tie. Show you an example of that real quick. Like this one right here. So this is 1202 right there. See how it says all tie, golf putter milling, magna cut, and then much higher Rockwell hardness. Pretty impressive he was able to get to that level of Rockwell hardness. A lot of manufacturers are not doing that yet. Now, they do have these silver milling styles, and I'm going to do these in somewhat chronological order here, but here is number 1081. This particular one, and sorry for failing that there, is the dark tie finish, and it has the actually a tie deal or a DLC coat on the hardware, which is pretty neat. So let's put 1081 out here. And you're just going to see some different style changes that happened over time as we go through a few of these. Now, I'm going to pull out my very earliest one that I have, and this is number 330. I just got this week, which is super exciting. Just did a video on it. And what you'll notice here, this is actually the same brand of box, hard case box that was used by, that is used by Craig Brown for his knives. And then you have the info on the inside there. So this is the earliest variant that I own. I haven't found something earlier than this. Z-Finite here, golf putter milling, all titanium construction, but it does have that ano there, which is really cool. And this one is a blurple ano, so depending on the angle you see it from, you're going to see different colors based on those different angles, and it's pretty wild. Really a cool variant with a really neat look to it. So let's put this guy over here. So 330, 498, and let's continue to pull out a few more variants. I only have 6 of these. I should say I am lucky to have 6 of these. But, if you've seen some of my Demco videos, I've gone pretty wild on Demcos, and I've done videos with upward of 30 plus knives. So this one right here is number 1158. This one is described as a smooth scale. What's interesting on this one is it's not quite like, you're not looking directly at the titanium, I don't believe. I could be wrong. It could be a really interesting finish I'm not familiar with. It does have a DLC coat on the back spacer and on the hardware, but there's a little bit of a matte finish on there almost. So it could be a titanium, but I feel like it's almost like a matte finish of some sort. This one's number 1158 here. So it's going to sit right here. And then I just have, I believe, one more that we can take a look at. And that is the very popular, and one of the things I really left out were the different milling patterns. And part of it was that the list is so exhaustive, it's very difficult. I'd say these are some of the most popular ones: the golf putter, the radial, and the smooth tie. But there are so many, and there's so many other finishes he did between carbon fiber scales, Damascus scales, and others, that it would absolutely be I don't have enough time in the day as a parent and having a full-time job to be able to record it all. I'm sure maybe Daniel Osborne has a book of all those different finishes, and he'd be a better resource to be able to provide insight into all the different scales that they've done. But suffice to say, and I'd highly recommend just going ahead and taking a look at the Instagram page. There's so much cool history there. It's just instagram.com/OZ Machine Company, and you can see all the wild things that they've done, the blade steels they've used. I mean, they've done, wild Damascus style blade steels and stuff, and all that I honestly can't do for a model like this. And maybe in like a year of more of collecting or something, I'd have a better sense and be able to rattle it off, kind of how I can do some brands like Demco and others. But having just spent really a few months pursuing these and going after them, it's very hard to try and be able to just rattle off all the different scale finishes that they've done, because there's so much diversity to it. There's not a frag pattern, but like a kind of like a square boxed pattern. Can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. They call it mag milled. There are so many different patterns. It's really cool, and it's, I think, it's one of those things that's kind of worth looking at. They've done a lot of things like Damascus back spacers. You can see here on this one, there's a Damascus pocket clip. So they've had, in some cases, like anode hardware, non-anode hardware. You can see a little bit of the sampling here, but not nearly what I imagine either someone that has a ton of Rosies might be able to show you, or someone that's been just, around longer around the brand. I feel like if you got in early, you could really have gotten some very interesting variants and be able to show a lot more than I can. I'm certainly proud of the 6 I have here, but having to get these on the secondary market makes it very difficult. So, I'll tell you a little bit about my thoughts on the ones that I have, and from there you can figure out what to do with information and/or put in the comments something I may have left out. Some of the things that I've noticed as I've begun collecting these is there are interesting patterns of finishing on the hardware, and I personally really like the more, I don't want to call it simple, but the continuity of the same color hardware to the scales. For me, it just feels like a very simple and understated look, and it ends up just putting together a overall, I don't know if it's a look, but like a beautiful but understated sense you get from it. And I feel like that about these two in particular, because they have that, that really singular color scheme throughout them. Now, the radial pattern was one I initially didn't really go for. I don't know if it was the photographs, the way it was taken or whatever, but in person, this may be my favorite all around one, just again, with the consistent hardware look. The finish on it, the dark finish, feels very modern to me. Something, if I were to take this out, I just feel like, 5 years younger than I am as a modern dad in 2023. It's just got a cool overall look to it, that kind of machined look, but also an elegant blade on it and whatnot. I do really like these DLC coated ones as well. I can't say I don't also really like that. It's honestly a little bit of a toss-up. I'm only like a few percentage towards one or the other, to be honest. I do like the flush look, but I also do like the older kind of standing up hardware as well. It gives a little texture, a little light inflection and whatnot. And and that's really cool. Now, when I said the lock bar insert, the thing that you'll look for to note if it has the lock bar insert with A, B, is it, number 117 or older, meaning a smaller number than 117, and B is that little dot right there, because that's where it sort of sits into the lock bar. I did notice on these early variants, particularly this number 330, the D10 is very light, and I don't know if that's just a particular unit, or if in the early ones they had lighter D10. I've heard some comments about that, but it is something that I did note and notice. Aside from that, there's not a lot that changed from number 330 to number 1202 here, my newest one. So it is interesting to note that like so much of the knives, even though this is different blade steel, is, and this is a machine company, right? They're using machine. These are not hand ground. They are hand assembled and tuned and whatnot, which is awesome, and it really shows. But it's something worth noting. There was also bearing changes that happened along the way. So they went from pressed bearings to a metal pressed fit bearings to a ceramic bearing over time. There's some things that they've done to change the knife and the performance, but overall, it's, you're looking at a few years worth of knives here without huge changes, which is interesting, right? So this number 330, the date on the COA is August of 2021, and then you're talking about a little less than a year and a half later for the number 1202 over here. So interesting to just kind of note the last year and a half. It seems like things have been pretty consistent in a lot of ways. Obviously they did make that change in April, I think I said, of 2022. So even, fewer changes since then, I'd say. You can see really consistent kind of fit and finish here on some of these newer variants. I'd say the next big thing, aside from like the color matching, is like, do you go polished or dark tie? There's some other options they've done. I think the most recent one was called Zirblasted finish, which some of the people that got it really loved. I did see a few of them hit the market right away after, so some people may not have loved them, or maybe were scalpers, hard to say. This is a very popular knife to scalp because you can get it for $700 or $800, $650 to $800, I think, and resell it immediately for over $1,000 without too much sweat. So it's interesting to see how that market's going. There's some artificial inflation of value because scalpers get a hold of them, and then they start selling them for more money. Some people buy knives to profit. Some people buy knives to either collect or resell after they've decided whether or not they like it, and they don't go for profit. So it's an element of the hobby, right? I'd say the other thing again here is those finishes. So I'd say the polar opposites are the dark tie finish and the polished finish. And the polished finish to me feels like a little more resilient. Like it'd probably show a little less wear if you were to carry it. That's like one of the things I did notice. The dark tie kind of looks like it would wear its any wear marks kind of elegantly. Maybe this is a wear mark. This one was carried once apparently by the prior seller. Maybe a wear mark here on the pocket clip. But I'd say like if you were to really use this knife versus that knife, you're probably going to see more of it because some of this is going to wear out, and at the end of the day, it's metal underneath, right? So it's interesting to think about, if you were to really EDC this knife and not just collect it, would you go with the dark tie, or would you, go with the, something polished? You may not have a choice because you may just have to take what you can get, and that's sort of an element of these as well. I'd say of the ones that I've seen on the secondary market, the smooth tie definitely have shown the wear the most, and no surprise there. That's pretty much the same on any knife. And I would imagine this particular one, I'm trying to decide if it's Cerakoted or something. I honestly cannot quite figure out what the finish is on this. I need to go, actually look up what he said about it. I think he said it was an ano with DLC, if I recall correctly. I think there's an ano on there of some sort. But I would need to go do some more research on that particular finish because it is pretty unique, and I haven't really seen one like that. But it really shows, again, the diversity of what the team over at OZ Machine Company are doing. And I wish I could, really have a good way of showing screens, and I don't do a lot of editing in my videos yet. I've done a couple here and there, but I wish I could just kind of show the Instagram and roll through it. But I hope while you're listening to this, maybe you're checking out the Instagram also, because it is well worth a look and will teach you a lot about the knives. He's basically posted a picture of every run of knife that has ever come out. And that is a really cool resource for someone that's either a collector or someone looking to buy their first, Roosevelt. That's a cool thing. There is also a pattern worth noting where part of it is smooth, and then up here there's like a crosshatch. I don't know what the name of that one is off the top of my head. I've heard it or I've seen it written on like Facebook pages and stuff before. Crosshatch milling is what they call that one. So it's basically smooth, a little crosshatch up here in the top. Doesn't really look like any of these, but kind of a in between that size and that size milling. Maybe you just say this size, but just a bunch of cross hatches just in the top corner of the knife. It's a really cool looking kind of hybrid, smooth / textured knife. Also, again, worth noting. So this one right here, let me see if I can figure out what he said on the posting, and maybe it'll help give us all a little education on what it is. But this one, let's see, that is number 1158. So that would probably be like mid or maybe early November of 2022. I'm just running through the Instagram really quickly while I talk to you here and just seeing if I can find that that post. Let me just double check on the box here if I can find that number. See, that one's 1158, so that's not it. It's 1202. I think it's this guy over here. Okay, 1158. Early, actually, so December of 2022. So it's actually pretty recent. Let me find it real quick and see if we can figure out what this finish is, because maybe that's one last bit of information I can share, and then I'll probably cut this one off. I know I've done some 1-hour videos with, very in-depth info, every blade steel, every handle finish, all that kind of stuff. I'm still learning a bit about Oz, but did feel like I've come a long way in the last few months, and I started having a lot of people asking me questions about Oz knives, because they go to me for a lot of Demco questions or whatever else I might collect. And I realized I don't know as much about these and haven't been able to give them as many good answers because honestly, they're newer to me. I'm definitely, as you can see, a few months in and I've done some damage, but okay, here's the one. So it does appear this matte bronze, blah, 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 stonewash. I think this is a different knife actually. Yeah, I may not be able to get the answer on this one. Maybe something I need to get off of the website or something like that. But yeah, it is cool again how you can go on the web page or on the Instagram page, and they actually have quite a bit on ozmachineco.com as well. So that's worth noting. Actually, an hour ago during my research here, they did do another, they just mentioned that the next 5 Roosevelts are made. They're doing another sort of run like this kind of finish, but with a silver, contrasting, like a polished hardware on it. And I think he's going to be doing a lottery run this week with that, and like a pretty cool, he's doing his first DLC blades right now, which is neat. So that'll be cool to see those come out and hit. But let me see if I can find the one last. I know I've seen the post about this particular knife, and I'm just struggling to find it right now while I try and talk at the same time. I'm not good at rubbing my belly and patting my head at the same time. What can I say? Seem to not be able to find it right now. But anyways, really neat, cool stuff. I hope you enjoyed this a little bit and it gave you a little more info about OZ Machine Company, the Roosevelt in particular. A little bit of the history of where they came from. I'll certainly be continuing to research, but just neat company, worth looking at. All USA made is something else I should note. It started off with Daniel Osborne, and then he brought his brother on, and I think they've hired quite a few people since. Gotten a chat with an employee or two that's worked there, and everyone really seems to like the culture and just what they're learning on the job there. It's really amazing company that's doing a really high quality knife made in the USA, and it's resonating with the market for a reason. So please like, subscribe, and most importantly on this particular video, comment with info that might be useful. Things like I got a great comment the other day about how they've changed the finish over time. So you can see here, this is the very early one. Also had a stonewash finish, but then along the way I've seen some finishes, I think like this one, for instance, that might be more of like a bead blast finish if I'm seeing it right. Don't really know what I'm looking at, to be honest, because it doesn't say on the COA what they did for that finish. But I got a great comment the other day when I was questioning if these two were different finishes, and they just pointed out that they had changed the stonewash process between these two, and one has a more aggressive stonewash than the other. So interesting stuff. I think that's all for now. Again, any comments are greatly appreciated on this one. Really cool knives that I'm super stoked about, and obviously have invested pretty heavily in here, as if you know the pricing and if you paid attention to what I just mentioned on pricing. In the secondary, this is a good amount of dollars here in hardware. So I will see you on the next one, and take care.